everybody. So today we're going to have the first tasting of my used yeast 1. Not good with coming up with names, so what this is the first batch was my Rye IPA 1. I'll put a card up here so you can go check that out. But I was thinking, I was like, you know, how much of that rye spice or rye would carry over into another beer if I reuse the yeast? I am using the Mr. Beer 2-gallon carboys for this. So it's the dark one. There's two versions. There's a 2-gallon, then the 1.5 gallon is the glass one. This is the plastic one. So I wanted to see how many times I could reuse or just dump on that same yeast. I didn't think it was going to be long, and because the beers are done, I do know that there's only one more, and I don't know if that's good. But what I did have when I bottled this batch, because of all the stuff, all the hops that go in there, because I pretty much dumped the whole entire pail in there, or the pot in there. There's going to be a lot of trub, a lot of settlement, everything going in there. And with that being a 2-gallon carboy, it's going to fill up fast, and plus where that spout is, I wasn't sure how long it would take to get over that. So when I made this beer, I mean, it took off like crazy. I think 3 hours and it was already bubbling. But yeah, when I went to bottle them, the first one did have a lot of yeast, protein, trub just coming out of it. I believe this is the bottle. But for the yeast that I did use was US-05. I wanted to try it with just something basic, not very expensive. I do believe this would be a little bit different if you had like a 5-gallon, 6-gallon, 7-gallon carboy or fermenter where you can turn the racking arm up. I still think you would fill it up quickly, but I think it would work a little bit better. Maybe after the second one you would want to wash it, put it back in there, and go from there. But for this version, 1 pound, 12 ounces of 2-row, 5 ounces of flaked rye, 4 ounces of cherry wood smoked malt. For the hop schedule, this is an hour boil. Again, a small batch, 1.25 gallons going into the fermenter. 0.15 ounces of Warrior at 60, 0.48 ounces, or I'm sorry, 0.25 ounces of Centennial at 10, 0.25 ounces of Amarillo, end of boil. It ended up being 16 bricks post-gravity. No dry hops in this one. So yeah, finished at 7.5 bricks, 7.37% ABV, bottled on 4/26. So what is this? Oh, a little over a month old. Never mind. So let's go ahead and open it, see what we get. Good hiss, good smoke. Go ahead and get it into this glass. Yeah, so while I'm pouring this, as I said, I always let my beers sit 30 days before I drink them. And so they're fermenting for 2 weeks. After the 2 weeks, I do bottle them. So right after I bottled this batch, I made another batch the same day. And that trub level was high. So I actually took the whole fermenter and dumped some of it out. And then looked at it, and it was well below that spigot line. So I filled it up with the wort, and it didn't take off for about 2 or 3 days. And I'm like, man, that's weird, because this one took off in 3 hours. And after 10 days, I did look at it, and I had like white bubbles on the top of it. I did bottle it. It didn't taste bad, but it just scares me that those white bubbles are there. So I just stopped it and pitched it, and we'll try another experiment. So we're only going to get 2 out of this. So let's go ahead and smell, or let's look at the color. A little bit of a head, white head on there. Color is very golden. Golden in color. I do have a little bit of protein yeast floating in there. Some bubbles coming up, not very many. I would say this looks darker than what it does on the picture. The picture looks a lot lighter. But yeah, golden color. I'm thinking that's more than chill haze. Maybe it's just chill haze on there. Not a lot of stuff, like I said, floating around, but there's a couple things in there that I can see. Now let's get to the smell. A little juicy fruit in there, maybe a little pine citrus mixed. For the cherry wood smoked malt, I don't think I would get any of that in the other versions or in the other beers that I've made. I really haven't picked out a cherry or a woodsy type. Nothing like if you like a barrel aged beer where you can get some of that oak out of there. I get nothing like this out of this malt so far, the cherry wood malt. But yeah, I would say a low-level juicy fruit followed by some pine citrus. Just a touch, not very much. Some sweetness in there, almost like it didn't attenuate all the way, which I would think it would. That's a real active yeast. And it's 7.3%. Again, I didn't write it down what Beersmith said. I'm not really getting anything from that flaked rye. I do want to do some other beers like oats, flaked oats versus flaked rye, just to see, because I'm still not sure what that flaked rye is doing to it. I think it's a little bit more expensive. It could be adding to the mouthfeel, maybe a little haziness in the beer. But I would think at this point, because I can't pick out what it's doing, I would go with flaked oats over flaked rye. Yeah, I don't get any spiciness, anything like that. Let's go ahead and taste. There's definitely some spiciness in there. It's definitely not bitterness, because it's more like on my cheeks and on my tongue than it is like in my throat. Very, very smooth. Carb, well, I think though that juicy fruit is fighting with that rye. Like there's like a spiciness. In there. I did there is 0.4. When I said that, I was going to leave that to the end because I thought it was also dry hopped with that. There's 0.48 ounces of Motueka in here, and I thought I dry hopped with that also. And I was that is part of the Yakima Valley hop box, the first one. There's definitely some pine, and that has to be coming from the Motueka, because usually out of the Amarillo Citra. But I don't remember if I got that in the Motueka beers that I made. Yeah, it's like you get some spiciness, you get some juicy fruit, generic fruit going to the back, and then some of that pine kicks in there. But in the aftertaste, it's more juicy fruit, spiciness in there. Definitely not a standard beer, I wouldn't think. But I can't say 100% that spiciness is coming from that flaked rye. It's just with flaked rye, it being a rye, I would think it would add spiciness to it. Now that spiciness could be coming from the hops. I don't think it would be coming, I'm sorry, Centennial. I think I said Citra. I don't think the Centennial would give off that spiciness. The Amarillo is not going to give off that spiciness. So it has to be the Motueka, or that flaked rye is really bringing a lot of spice to this beer. But it could also be left over from the Rye IPA 1. That could be infused in there. Obviously, there's going to be a little bit of beer left in there. So maybe that spiciness is coming from the first batch. I mean, it tastes like there's like rye in this beer. Like a lot of it. Yeah, it's okay. I don't think that rye, and I didn't think it was gonna mix well with that juicy fruit from the Amarillo. Maybe some of that Centennial is playing a part in there too. But it just seems weird with that rye and that juicy fruit in there. Would I make it? No. Would I drink it? Yes. Am I glad I made it? Yes, because I think I need to make some more batches, maybe with some different hops, to see if that flaked rye really brings all this spice to it. I mean, it's like there's Chinook and a ton of rye malt and flaked rye, if you want to go that far in this beer, and there's really not 5 ounces. But yeah, I think it clashes for me at least, and I think most people it would clash for. I would say take one of the two out, but maybe the Motueka and the Amarillo are giving that juicy fruit. So either take those out and replace it. Maybe Cascade would work well. A little bit more floral mixed with that rye would probably work. But yeah, overall, an okay beer in my eyes, not one that I would brew again. If you enjoyed this video, check some more out over here. And until next time, happy brewing.